All right. So listen, everybody, you've seen my face this week. I struggle with sleeping. And I imagine most people do. As I mentioned, I've never met one person that's ever shown up for work and been like, I got the perfect amount of sleep, because it doesn't exist. And I feel like I know that there's an insomnia chapter of One Funny Mother, which I think is hilarious. So today we have a guest on I think you're going to love, talking about all things sleep. So you could sleep through the weekend and cuddle up and all your kids will be gone and maybe your house will be clean. That might be really specific to me. I actually think you'll sleep better when your kids are gone. I'm sure this is not part of the advice he's going to give. This is just Dena advice. Get rid of your children and you will sleep so much better. He is a neurologist, a sleep expert, and an author. So I'm pretty sure he's not going to say anything horrible about your children. But if he did, I would be on board. He has practiced sleep medicine and neurology for 20 years, involved with sleep medicine for 30 years. He's the author of The Sleep Solution, Why Your Sleep is Broken and How to Fix It, and The Rested Child, Why Your Tired, Wired, and Irritable Child May Have a Sleep Disorder and How to Help. He works with lots of different organizations, with the NBA, the NHL, the MLB, served as a consultant for a number of teams, including our own Phillies here. He is the host of a podcast called Sleep Unplugged by Dr. Chris Winter, and he also hosts a Sleep.com series called Sleeping Around with Dr. Chris Winter. What? I want to have a show called Sleeping Around. Very different show. Very different. He's a board certified in sleep medicine by the American Board of Sleep Medicine. Is also board certified in neurology by the American Board of Psychology and Neurology. And sometimes in his off hours, when he's not sleeping, he might be a triathlete. So listen, we're all losers. And let's welcome to the show our guest today, Dr. Chris Winter. Hey, Chris. Yeah, sit down, everybody. Thank you for the clapping.
Well, thanks for having me, Dena. How are you today? Today you slept well?
I did. Last night I slept well because I was thoroughly exhausted. But the other night, Chris, I stare at the ceiling and I wonder what's wrong with my life. Is everybody else doing that?
A lot of people do that. You know, it's interesting. You said that you think that kids might be the problem. I've found that when the kids leave, and when you retire, that's when sleep gets really bad, because no matter what happens with your sleep tonight, you still got to get up, get them on the bus, pack their lunches, and do all that stuff. So there is a certain level of consistency that they require, that when they walk out the door, there's not a lot stopping you from sleeping until noon. And that could be a problem too, I guess.
It's not though, Chris. What about the addition of bourbon? You're like, Dena, that's a different show.
No, alcohol is the most common sleep aid in this country, even though it's terrible for your sleep. I always tell patients there's a difference between sleep and sedation.
Is there? Because I enjoy both, Chris. I'm going to be honest. I enjoy both. So what does this say? This says back-to-back winner, the U.S. Open Sleep Tournament. What does that mean?
It said put something there optional, and I thought that would be fun. It's nothing. It doesn't mean anything.
I don't know, Chris, because I have a feeling pretty much 530 people would have signed up for the U.S. Open Sleep Tournament, and it would have been.
There was a group in Australia that was trying to create the National Sleep Championship, where everybody would wear a Fitbit or some sort of sleep tracker, and it was like a big tournament. So you and I would be against each other in round one. And then the next day we would look at our data from our watches, and whoever had the best data moved on to the next round. So I thought that was pretty. So there is something similar to that, but this is not real.
Okay. And we're going to start it here, Chris. I love this show already. So you were a neurologist first and then became a sleep expert. Like how did this how does one say, you know what I'm into? Sleeping. How does this happen? How do you become you?
There's a lot of pathways. So I was actually involved in sleep research as an undergrad, just because I've didn't know what I wanted to do, and guy offered me money so I could buy some beer and some biology credit hours. And there was something about breast implants which got me really excited. And I realized they were actually using them to put into the necks of these pigs to make them have sleep apnea. So it was all very murky, but I got into it, and it was great, and it's a wonderful community. And so then I went to medical school, and then in medical school, you have to kind of decide what you want to do. And so some sleep doctors are neurologists, some are pulmonologists, some can be ENTs, pediatricians. So it's just one pathway to being that. But I think sleep resides in the brain. So I'm a big fan of the neurology sleep doctor. And I'm saying that to all my pulmonary and ENT buddies that are listening. I like to give them a hard time that sleep has as much to do with the lung as it does the spleen.
You just said so many words that normally wouldn't go together that most of my audience is so confused. They're like, did he just say they put breast implants right here? Because
yeah, they did. That was back in a time when they were off the market. There was some problems with them leaking or whatever. And so there were abundance of breast implants. And eventually we stopped the breast implants and put these little balloons so you could inflate the balloon, and one night the little pig would have sleep apnea, and you could deflate it, and the next night they wouldn't. So you could test, what does sleep apnea cause in terms of blood pressure and weight gain and stuff like that.
It might be a pig. Now that you're explaining it, I think I might some nights be a pig. Yeah, the poor pigs. What's happening? So you do this research prior, you go to medical school, they make you pick something, you pick, I'm going to move towards sleep, and you become a neurologist. It's amazing.
Yeah, at some point, it was never really the plan, but I'd been involved in sleep for so long by the time I got to medical school that I didn't want to leave the community. So I didn't. And I love it. It was all completely accidental. But I think this is the 30th year I've been involved in sleep, which I think I was involved in sleep before I could legally buy alcohol. So it's been a long time.
It's so funny. So we have a lot of sayings that we say on this show. And so a lot of the ladies, the sayings are our favorite thing. Most of them are dirty, but the ladies always joke that they have a bingo card that has all the sayings on it. And so somebody just said, does anybody have an abundance of breast implants on their bingo card? That is not something that's been said here often, but it might be added now. So I want to thank you for that. Oh, Melinda said you don't look over 30. So you must have been 12 when you started.
Melinda, let me send you a copy of my book because you're my favorite person ever. I'm way over 30.
Now you have.
Way on the other side of 30.
I have to say, before we get into the interview, our people that watch this show are obsessed with what's behind the people who are on the show. So I say, Sleep Unplugged is the picture behind you. That's your podcast, right? And then you have
my daughter, who's a studio art major, designed it, and I'm a big David Bowie fan, and so she put the little lightning bolt right there to kind of as a little homage to Aladdin saying David Bowie. So that's the little inside joke there.
And then what's the picture on the other side?
So this is what is often referred to as the Sleeping Girl. It's a Liechtenstein print. The original was color. But I found a copy of it that was black and white. And I think when it sold at auction, it was the most expensive art piece or so. It was some story that went along with it. At the time when it was auctioned off, it went for the highest amount. But I'm a big Roy Lichtenstein fan, and I thought Sleeping Girl was kind of cool.
Look at you. You're so interesting, Chris. All of you, and you're a triathlete as well. We could talk forever. No, all right. So
not really.
Really? So what is that? Is it swimming, running, and archery? I don't even know what the third thing is. I don't know.
It's swimming, biking, then running. And yeah, I like to do those from time to time. They're fun.
Isn't there one in the Olympics where they ski and then there's archery?
Yeah, so in the Winter Olympics, I think it's biathlon. It's skiing and shooting a rifle. So they keep the rifle on their back and they cross-country ski, and then they have to calm themselves, after doing all the skiing. And then in the Summer Olympics, there's the modern pentathlon. It's like rowing, horseback riding, maybe shooting something. It's 5 things. I can't remember what they do there, but anyway, they do it down in Sarasota. They have a big competition at the big rowing place. So there's water is definitely involved in that.
It's so funny because some of the things I just think that they do at the Olympics, I just think if you just got regular people, it would be just as entertaining, maybe more to watch. Like if we just got a whole bunch of these drunk ladies and said, ski down this mountain and then shoot something, it would be the greatest thing to watch ever.
I've always thought that they should put one lay person in every Olympic event.
Exactly. They'll be like,
to clear up that misperception of, well, shit, I could do as well as that. I think I could beat Jamaica in that, and just to see how wrong you are. Like, I one time swam against some of my son's swim team members when he was like a junior in high school, and they didn't use their arms in the race. I got to use any part of my body that would create forward propulsion, and they crushed.
They still beat you?
Well,
with
easily.
no arms. They should just have like an old Italian guy named Al. Like it'll be like, and the U.S. is in first position, followed by Jamaica, followed by England. Al can't get his skis off. Al's like a nut job. It would be the greatest. It'd be the greatest. All right. Well, let's talk about sleep because I feel like we could talk to you about anything. But so we actually have a bunch of different chapters around the country. We have people that have like the Maryland chapter, the New England chapter, where they get together. But one of the funny chapters that they have formed is the insomnia chapter because there's a lot of ladies that are up and some fellas as well. Like, what are the most common sleep issues that people do come to you with for help? Is it insomnia?
Yeah, it's probably, there's sort of two camps. One is insomnia, the idea that you're struggling with sleepiness. The other one would be, excessive sleepiness, something on the order of like sleep apnea, where every time you sit down, you fall asleep. So in our clinic, I can't sleep, I can't stay awake are sort of the two major groups. And of the I can't sleep, the insomnia, I can't stay awake, it's usually sleep apnea. So yeah, these are the lion's share of what we see in our sleep clinic for sure, for both adults and kids.
Kids get I think they could sleep does sleep apnea show in kids as much? I feel like it's an adult thing, right?
It's more of an adult thing, but kids can certainly have it. I think the issue with kids is they don't snore as loudly. Yeah. They don't typically have bed partners, so nobody's hearing what's going on.
Yeah.
And I think when you have a child, to your point earlier in the show, who all he or she wants to do is sleep, you think you've won the lottery. Your kid puts himself to bed every night, or they like to take naps and will sleep for 3 hours so you can get a lot of work done. So I think the manifestation of excessive sleepiness in a child seems almost like a positive. As they get older, that's kind of when it becomes more of a negative. And when you're an adult and falling asleep at stoplights, that's not great at all.
Wow, I didn't know that was a thing. So I feel like, all of us have heard, stay off your phones at night, try not to be on the computer. Like, how true is all that stuff? Because so I don't know if you could tell, but I'm bilingual, Chris. So at night I do Duolingo and I learn my Spanish words, but it puts me to sleep. But is it true? Like what are some of the things that we're doing that are probably not helping us at nighttime?
So there's sort of two conversations going on when we talk about these things. There is, what are the things that we do that sort of set the stage for great sleep? If you've got a kid who's decided that she wants to run track, you may need to go to the store and buy some running clothes and some good running shoes because her, heels are not going to cut it on the track. So you're doing all these things. These are not necessarily going to make her a great track star, but they're at least setting the foundation for it. Right. And I think that we often sort of mix these two things up, that people who struggle with their sleep think, oh, if I leave my phone in the kitchen, that will solve my 7-year insomnia problem. I don't think that it is at all. I think that you should probably have your phone in the kitchen and not in your bedroom, but people can watch TV right before they go to bed. I watched the thrilling conclusion of Echo 3 last night on Apple TV, turned it off and went right to bed, even though the ending was wildly unsatisfying. Just to let you know. But good show. But so I don't think that having a TV or not having a TV or a phone is going to really create it. But it's sort of like, it'd be a better practice to not do that. But it's not going to solve people's insomnia problem. Those are really two very different things. So
what do you say?
Exercise, eat well, do all these things, but those aren't going to really solve the sleep problem.
So what do you say to people who just can't shut their brains off? Like, I feel like most women in general, maybe I'm generalizing, that, we're tired, our bodies are tired, but as soon as you have the opportunity to lay down, it's like the list of all the things you didn't do, all the things you have to do tomorrow. Like, is that possible to stop that?
I don't think that you really need to. I mean, there's this, so this is a great one. I mean, there's all kinds of great sleep myths, and that's one of them, that the people who sleep turn their brains off and the people who don't can't. I got shit going through my head 24 hours a day, yet I sleep great. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, so this idea that because you're trying to remember when the last time you changed the oil in your car is the thing that's keeping you awake. No. So the only time we turn our brains off is when we're dead. So brains operate 24 hours a day. So you should be able to sleep and still wonder, gosh, when will I have time to do X, Y, and Z this weekend, because it's getting fuller and fuller with my schedule. So this idea that if you have thoughts in your head, that's going to keep you from falling asleep. No. When you're sleepy, I mean, sleep's an absolute. It's impossible not to sleep. So that's the most important thing to be said, is that when you talk to people about insomnia, asking somebody, what's insomnia? 99 out of 100 people say insomnia is when a person can't sleep. No, there's no such thing as that. Insomnia is when you can't sleep when you've decided you want to. That's part A. Part B is you're upset about it. So the secret to great sleep is you're equally happy in bed awake as you are asleep. So if you go to bed at night, you fall asleep right away, great. If you don't, who cares? Like, you're going to sleep. It's like saying, it's like, what do you do when you don't eat lunch? You go to lunch with your friends, they all eat food, they all order their food, and you're like, oh, I'm just not that hungry. I'm just gonna have a Diet Coke. And then what? Call your doctor because you're on the verge of starving to death? You need a pill to make sure you eat the sandwich? No. You have faith that this is kind of strange because I love to eat lunch, but today I'm not. So you drink your Diet Coke, and you move on with your life, and you'll eat eventually.
But Chris, if you do that for a week, say you only sleep for an hour for every day for a week.
That doesn't happen. That doesn't. This idea that if you look at people, listen, two things. Number one, if you're human, you're going to spend 6 hours out of every 24 you're on this planet on average sleeping, and there's nothing you can do to stop that. Number two, the perception of so you're talking about different sayings. We've got lots of sayings in our clinic. In fact, in my last book, we put a bunch of them at the end of it. Can't fall asleep hanging sheetrock. That's one of our favorite things, meaning a lot of sleepy people stay busy. If they're busy, they don't fall asleep. If they sit down to do something, read a Vanity Fair article about Jennifer Lawrence's acting career, they fall asleep. So a lot of sleepy people gravitate towards being busy because they know if they sit still, they'll fall asleep. But another saying, we always talk about in terms of sleep is perception of sleep and reality are two different things. So every week I will see a patient who says, I'm lucky if I get an hour of sleep a night. Okay. And it's been that way for 6 years. Not physiologically possible. So buy a Fitbit, put it on your wrist, and in 30 days, come back and see me and bring the data. It's going to show that you're sleeping 6 hours minimum every 24 hours.
Okay, but what about the part where they say, well, I'm sleeping for 6, but I'm not in a deep sleep? Like, that blew my mind.
That's a good point.
Like, so you're not really sleeping. Your eyes are closed, but you're not really sleeping.
Well, you are really sleeping, but you may not be sleeping well. So just that conversation detour from I can't sleep, and that's why I take the melatonin, the trazodone, the Ambien, the whatever you're taking, to I don't sleep well is huge. That's really important. So I'm not telling people that everybody sleeps well. I'm just saying if you're under the impression you're taking that medication or drinking that Merlot every night because without it you won't sleep, nothing could be further from the truth.
You're blowing my mind right now, and I think you've angered a lot of ladies, and you've also piqued.
Not here to anger, here to tell the truth.
I was gonna
Because
say,
search
I
yourself.
feel like
You've been
I
on
want
7 different sleeping pills. They don't work really well, do they? Right, because you're not dealing with the right problem. This is how we killed Michael Jackson. Michael Jackson went to his doctors and said, I can't sleep. And so what did they do? They gave him pills. When he came back and said, these pills don't work, they gave him more pills. When those pills didn't work, they sent a surgeon to his house with propofol, which is the drug you get for a colonoscopy, and they anesthetized him every night and eventually killed him. All because they fundamentally misunderstood what Michael Jackson was saying when he said he didn't sleep. Michael Jackson slept. He just didn't feel like he slept. There were things going on with his sleep that had nothing to do with his inability to sleep, because that's not compatible with life. That's me telling you, I haven't eaten in 6 months and I haven't breathed either. And you're looking at me and saying, well, Chris, you look like you're eating and you're breathing. Well, I'm not. And I don't care what you say, because I don't breathe. In fact, I don't eat either. I just stand out in front of the sun and photosynthesize my own food. Like, you're like, no. That's not scientifically possible. And that's what sleep is. So we talk about these simple tips and tricks of how to sleep. And well, we all sleep. If you're watching this podcast, you're sleeping.
There's no tricks. You're saying there's no tricks.
There's tricks, but it's really more about an acceptance. So you wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning, go to the bathroom, get back in bed, and don't fall back to sleep right away. How do you feel about that? I can tell you how I feel about it. I don't care. I like being that awake. I can sit there and think about my next vacation. My wife started a new job today. I can think about what to do to surprise her when she gets home from work. I can think about the ending of Echo 3 and how I would have changed it had I been the producer. I can think about my dream home, my celebrity crush. I got all kinds of things to think about. There's my running mind. And I enjoy it. I like being in bed awake. It's the only time of my life that's quiet. Nobody needs something from me. So I embrace it. I run towards it. If you can do that, you'll never have insomnia, because insomnia runs on fear. You're scared you're going to wake up, pee, and not be able to get back to sleep.
Oh, something happened to your feed. I'm not sure what's going on there. Oh, that's better now. All right. So what about people who might walk in their sleep?
You could push the applause button for that. That was a good answer.
Oh, Michelle.
I'm kidding.
So what about people who like sleepwalk or are very active? Are there people that are more active while sleeping than others?
Absolutely. Yeah. Sleepwalking, somnambulism, which is such a great word. And then sleep talking, somniloquy. So sleep talking is generally considered to some degree a normal variant. So if you're a sleep talker every now and then, no big deal. If you do it every night and scream obscenities and things like that, that might be pushing more towards something that might need to be looked at. Sleepwalking is usually something we do out of deep sleep. So if you divide your night in half, the first night is largely deep sleep. The second half is largely REM sleep. So if you have kids, a nightmare is usually an awakening out of REM sleep in the second half of the night, or dream sleep. A night terror, when you put your kid down and sit down to watch a little bit of The Voice, and 30 minutes later they're screaming, right as soon as you put them to bed, that's an awakening out of deep sleep. So sleepwalking is usually an abnormal awakening out of deep sleep, and can be a real problem if people get up and go places or lock themselves out of hotel rooms when they're naked. And then so we consider that under the umbrella term of parasomnia. Sleep-related eating, you get up and eat weird things and go back to bed and don't remember it the next day. Sleep-related sexual activity is kind of a thing, where people engage in sexual activity and then they don't remember it the next day, which can be very murky in a strange way. With couples where one's antagonizing the other about sex at night, and then the next morning they're like, I don't remember saying or doing any of those things. I was just an expert witness in a case where a guy was with his child in a hospital, and he woke up, he's in bed with his child who's having surgery or something, woke up, took his clothes off, went around the curtain, and got into bed with the mother of somebody else in this. The hospital room had 2 different people in it, which is the worst idea in the world. But anyway, separated by a curtain. So he just got in bed with her, and she screamed, and the police came, and you can see in the video, the guy's like, I have no idea what anybody's talking about, but I'm sure what you're saying is true. I just can't answer any questions. I have no memory of that. In fact, I have no idea why I'm naked. So
You're
yeah.
blowing my mind right now. I feel like I could sit at a bar and listen to you all night. All
Yeah,
night.
talk to my wife. She'll cure you of that. It's interesting for a week, I think, and then it kind of.
No, it's so crazy that you're talking about that people like there's just not any to my knowledge. I don't think I'm walking around my neighborhood naked. I mean, that just sounds so crazy to like wake up and not know that these things have happened. But I think that of all the things that you said, probably talking in your sleep is probably the most common, right?
It is absolutely. And it can be an indicator of something going on. Like my youngest son snored a lot, and we get a lot of strep infection. So he eventually had his tonsils out. As soon as his tonsils were out, stopped snoring, and he also stopped talking. Like that was kind of the joke in the family, is that you'd be sitting downstairs and all of a sudden kind of an intense conversation was going on from his bedroom, but he was asleep, and it was almost like he was speaking in tongues. Like when you listen to it, every third or fourth word made sense, but the other three were just complete gibberish. So we kind of missed that when the tonsils left and the sleep talking ended, but I'm sure his future partner won't.
That's so crazy. That's so crazy. So do you have any bits of advice for people who might be struggling? I feel like what you said today about the part about insomnia itself not being a problem, but really how we react to it.
Sure.
Like what are things, like how would somebody know if what they're experiencing is just a lack of sleep and they can like lean into it and like you said, just accept it and relax and maybe it's a little better versus somebody who might have a real problem. Like how would somebody know?
Well, first of all, insomnia is a real problem. It's a bad problem. It's just maybe not the problem you think it is. So I'm not saying Michael Jackson didn't have a problem. He had a serious problem, but his problem wasn't, we need to find the right drug so that he can sleep. So that, in fact, in one of the very first episodes of the podcast I did, it was about insomnia really being sort of almost a form of trauma or PTSD. I mean, individuals who've had insomnia for a long time really grow to dread or fear sleep. And that's when its teeth are really in you. Do you know what I mean? Like it's a serious problem. We just don't deal with it properly. You go to your primary care doctor, he's like, oh, that pill didn't work. Let's try some other pills. And that's really not the solution for insomnia. The other thing to keep in mind too is that insomnia and sleep deprivation are really two different things. So here's a quick exercise. There's something called an Epworth sleepiness scale. So I'll give you a situation you might find yourself in, and your listeners can do the same thing. So I'll give you the situation. I want you to imagine yourself in that situation. You're going to tell me how likely it would be for you to fall asleep. And your answer can be no chance you'd fall asleep, slight chance, 50-50 definite. So the first situation, lying down to rest in the afternoon when circumstances allow you to. No chance you'd fall asleep, slight chance, 50-50 definite.
Definite.
Talking to someone. How likely it would be for you to fall asleep talking to somebody? No chance, slight chance, 50-50 definite.
No, there's no way I'm going to fall asleep.
Reading a book, magazine, or newspaper.
Does the internet count? I read
Sure.
mostly.
But not late at night. Like during business hours kind of thing.
Oh, no, not really.
Watching television or a movie.
Yeah, a little 50-50 if it's late at night. If it's late at night.
Sitting quietly at a meeting, lecture, religious service.
Do you mean like actually fall asleep or like get a little tired?
Yeah, no, actually nodding off.
No, I'm not going to do that.
Okay. Sitting quietly after a big lunch.
By myself?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I might. 50-50.
Okay.
Love lunch.
Okay.
Love lunch.
Passenger in a car for 1 hour without a break.
No.
Driver of a car parked at a stoplight or stuck in traffic. Okay.
No.
So that's called an Epworth sleeping scale. You scored a 6, which I think is a perfect score. I think 4 to 6 is perfect. So the way you score it, no chance is 0, slight chance is 1, 50-52, definite is 3. So you can score anywhere from a 0 to a 24. I've never seen a 24 because it means you definitely fall asleep when you're driving a car, which is not really compatible with life. So we consider scores of 10 or below to be normal.
Okay.
I would say 9 or below normal. 10 or above is what we call excessively sleepy. And so if you scored a 17 on that, I know right away it's either because you're not getting enough sleep, you stay up till midnight and get up to work, you go to work at 4,
Right.
or there is something dysfunctional about your sleep. So you ask, what's the best way to figure out, do I need intervention? I think anybody who has trouble with sleep can always go see a sleep physician or a clinician provider. They're never going to say no. I mean, in fact, I always think to people, why did you come now and not 5 years ago when this was just getting started? But I think that for people who score high on that, that's usually a really big red flag. When you're saying, I had a guy who'd roll his hair up into the window of his truck. So as he drove down the road, if he fell asleep, it would pull his hair and wake him up. Like if you're doing things like that to keep yourself awake, you should really talk to somebody.
Wow. All right. So say there's people listening, where can they go for resources if they are listening and they're like, hey, I think I might want to get checked. Like where can we send them?
Yeah. So my podcast is Sleep Unplugged. So we do an episode every week. We just celebrated our year anniversary about a month or two ago. And the first episode of every month is always some topic about insomnia. So if you're struggling to fall asleep at night and kind of understand what I'm saying, but kind of think that it's not that. I hear what you're saying, but I can't sleep. You should listen to that. My first book called The Sleep Solution, Why Your Sleep is Broken and How to Fix It, is really kind of a workbook for your sleep. Because I think that fixing sleep starts with education about sleep. I think we all think we know a lot about sleep, but it's all the weird stuff that grandparents told you. If you want to fall asleep quickly, keep a knife and a fork and a spoon under your pillow. A patient told me that. I'm like, that means nothing. So defending yourself with a cocktail line, so anyway, so I think education's where it starts. And if you have kids and you're worried about their sleep, my second book was called The Rested Child, but there's lots of great books. Jade Wu wrote a really nice book about insomnia called Hello Sleep. There's a new book called Sleep to Heal that I really like by a good buddy of mine who's a sleep doctor in Indiana. So my book is a little bit sarcastic and it's got some references to pop culture in it that some people think are hilarious and other people it really irritates the hell out of them. So if I'm not your cup of tea, that's fine. Somebody out there is, and we can figure that out.
Well, that's awesome. Well, if you would like to find Chris, you can find him at Dr. Chris Winter. His website is chriswinter.com. So be sure to check him out. Thank you so much, Chris, for joining us. You're so fun. I'm sure the podcast is.
You have a great weekend.
Try it out. You too. Thanks for joining us, everybody. Let's hear it for Chris. Thanks so much, Chris.